Greetings, fellow pattern interrupters. If you've been struggling with nice guy syndrome and running nice guy subroutines and feel like you've been a living doormat, I'd like to suggest to you that boredom might be one of your answers. I had a bit of an aha moment this morning. Obviously, I have to focus myself to do these daily drops. And I was going to talk about content creation and that kind of stuff. And then I thought, nah, algorithm won't like that. Let's stick to the topic. And the topic that I am plugging is curing nice guy syndrome and helping people who feel that they're not getting what they need out of life because they're not being assertive enough. And a lot of people who are not assertive enough feel that this is a personality issue when in fact it's just subroutines that are run neurologically through the brain. And so then I thought about the power of boredom. I thought about something that I gave up recently. I gave up drinking as regularly as I used to. And I've been through all sorts of processes to try and do this. And all of those processes have involved purposeful, directed, goal-setted, motivated, pushy, rational elements, shall we say. But what I mean by that is that I've tried to outthink my rising dependence on alcohol. And by trying to outthink it, and by trying to provide myself with really strong rationales and strong goals and strong frameworks and patterns and all this kind of stuff, what I'd done was I'd stuck a golden crown on top of the habit. And I'd created conditions whereby I took what is essentially not a very big problem and I've made it into a giant problem. I've put it on a pedestal mentally and emotionally by fixating and by just according it more importance than it deserves. Now, hold on a second. I've got to close the door because the washing machine is going to bug the hell out of me. I'll be back. Okay, pattern interrupters, I'm back. Where was I? What I was saying was that when you have a rather large goal or something that's very important in your mind, which is affecting you emotionally, and it can be confidence in social situations, it can be a fear of friction, it can be just that you feel that you're not getting what you want when you want it. Sometimes it's a good idea to simply let go of the emotions, because the emotions that you attach to the circumstance can be like gasoline on the fire. What do I mean by that? I pray I hear you asking. Well, the more anxious, nervous energy that you invest into a problem, the greater the problem is going to become. Now, there is advice out there as old as Dale Carnegie, which is sit down and write out solutions and problems and ask yourself what's the worst that can happen. Actually, if you do that, it might be a great way to release some of the pressure that you're experiencing emotionally about a problem you have. So back to the title, The Power of Boredom. By boredom, I mean that slightly disinterested feeling that you might get when you're just over it. I found myself not drinking as much, not because I have some kind of planned assault. No, I'm not trying to storm a beach. I'm not trying to establish a beachhead. I'm not even marking the days. I just stopped drinking as much as I was because, frankly, it got boring. And having realized that it got boring, I held on to that feeling. I thought, well, if it's boring now, won't it be boring tomorrow? Why am I trying to reinvigorate some kind of false, fake sense of excitement around the event of getting drunk? When in fact, the truth is, it's just boring. So then I thought, what if we could harness that? What if it's okay to harness the power of being bored? What if, in order to create being bored, we simply reframed the activity? And we reframed it and we reduced and extracted all of the emotional and anxious feelings that accompany the activity. So instead of, I'm trying to stop, you just say, I stopped. Instead of saying, I'm experimenting with quitting, I just don't do it anymore. I don't do that. I will keep you updated on the progress of this. I might be found inebriated in the skip in 3 days. Who knows? I'm hoping that I don't. But let's face it, I'll make an interesting live stream if I do. And I promise you I will do that. I'll live stream it if I find myself inebriated in a skip. Where I'm going with this is that the problem we have is that we have stress hormones, cortisol, in our minds, in our brains. And if we put ourselves on a constant or in a constant state of anxiety, worry, and fear, all we're doing is placing our metaphorical finger on the trigger. And the cortisol flood, it's on a hair trigger. So every time you go over a bump in the road, you get, whoa, the anxiety, oh, the fear, oh no, the worry, what am I going to do? And then what you're going to do is you're going to use lots of cognitive load, simply worrying about things that haven't happened or that aren't going to happen. What you're going to do then is you're going to employ the cortisol to get into an addictive cycle of anxiety and then fear, followed by more anxiety. You're going to ramp up the process. And in the end, the thing that's worrying you, it might be your confidence, it might be your drive to rise up in your career, it might be relationships with people at work, it might be romantic relationships. I'm mostly dealing with relationships here and the impact of relationships on people. What I'm suggesting is if you place too much emphasis and importance on a single thing, it's going to put your cortisol levels high and on a hair trigger, and it's going to take very little to bump you up into the red. So why not step off the gas a little bit? Why not engage your boredom? Why not embrace the boredom? Instead of worrying about this giant issue that is looming large in your mind, and frankly, which is largely invisible to most other people, not consciously anyway. Instead of having that thing loom large in your mind and your mentality, try a different approach. Try to let go. There is an ancient samurai saying, which is, if you are hanging from a cliff, afraid of dying, simply let go. Now, I'm not suggesting that the samurais went around hanging off cliffs and killing themselves. What I'm suggesting is that the samurai proverb is describing to you that the fear is greater than the reality. And all sorts of ways, and in all sorts of ways, we find ourselves hanging off cliffs, don't we? We hang off the cliff of, oh, am I attractive enough? Should I have this conversation? Let go. Have the conversation. Stop worrying about how you look or your attractiveness. Just have the conversation. We worry about, can I overcome my addiction to alcohol or this substance or that substance? Well, instead of creating this giant Godzilla in your mind, which you're supposed to be fighting with a wooden sword, simply learn to be bored with it. Let go of the anxiety, let go of the emotions. Reframe that Godzilla into a hamster. You may be worried about your career progress, but you're locked into an environment or a job. Well, you're going to cause all sorts of justifications for staying where you are or not moving, aren't you? Because when you worry, you're going to roll around in your head the notion that you're unemployable elsewhere. Everybody, that you should be really grateful to your company for having you. Well, let go of that worry. Look at the situation with a clearer head, a less impassioned, anxious, emotional head. Start to become disinterested and, dare I say it, a little bit more stoic about your situations. So that's why my title today was How Boredom Helps. I think, for what it's worth, that by releasing the emotion and the emotions that you attach to events, situations, and circumstances. By so doing, what you're going to do is create a more dispassionate attitude towards the things which are currently causing you to worry. And one of the first steps to releasing the things that worry you away, releasing them into the wild, for example, is to stop handing them power. Because when you worry about something, and when you're anxious about something, and when you are obsessed on an emotional level about something or the outcomes, what you're doing is you're handing that something much more power over you than it deserves. And not only are you handing much more power over you than it deserves to that thing, you're also creating a hair trigger for your stress hormone, and you're also causing depletion. There's only so much juice in the battery. Your brain can only carry so much cognitive load in a day. So why are you encumbering it and putting it under this fake strain of worry and emotional attachment to things which don't deserve it? Your brain's like a donkey, isn't it? What are you going to do? You're going to keep loading another stick, another log. Have you seen those pictures of donkeys where they got covered in load and they're struggling down the road, and the owner seems to think that because the donkey has carried so much, it can surely carry a little bit more. Eventually the donkey collapses, doesn't it? And that's what happens to us emotionally when we put too much emphasis and give too much power to the things that we worry about. Boredom can be a great tool. Learning to become disempowered, not disempowered. You are already disempowered. Learning to become disimpassioned, or learning to become slightly bored about things which bother you, is a great first step towards seeing that thing for what it is. Seeing that you've been creating a monster, a large monster, which actually is probably a bit of a mouse. Now, the final thing I'm going to say about this is the power, or the lack of power, or whatever, the role of ego. There's a form of inverse vanity that we attach to the things we worry about. Let's have a look at the worry of not drinking, which was one that gave me this aha moment. So what I've done is I've created a view in my mind that my attachment to drink and alcohol is a monster, a Godzilla-like massive dragon, shall we say, and that I'm fighting it with faulty weaponry, a wooden sword, a plastic shield, and I'm beating this monster and it's just growling. It's not even growling at me. It's just going, yeah, whatever. Actually, it isn't a monster. If I were to just take off the specs and have a look at it closely, I'd see that it's closer to being a hamster or a mouse. And I could, in fact, crush it if I so desired. But because I've become so wrapped up in my problem, what I've done now is I've fabricated some kind of massive ego prop around my problem. The world is full of billions of people, all who have problems. How is it that I've created the conditions whereby my problem seems to be bigger than other people's problems? And then I look at other people who conquer their problems and I wonder why I can't do it. Well, it's my ego. My ego has given me so much self-importance about the power of my problem that I've created this monster, when in fact my ego should take a back seat, stop propping me up with fake flattery, and see the problem for what it is, a bit of a mouse. Okay, maybe a hamster. So if you are suffering and struggling and worrying and anxious about a particular problem, I'd like you to consider the idea that your ego is creating that problem for you because in some bizarre sort of way, it feels good to give you the props to make you feel like your problem is bigger and more important than everybody else's, when in fact it isn't. Often, the problem which you think is a dragon turns out to be a mouse. And it's time to get slightly bored with this big problem. Let go of the emotions, let go of the anxiety and the stress, and start to just embrace the fact that your feelings, your emotions, and your situations are perfectly normal. You're not Superman. You're not saving the world. You're not taking on the world. What you're doing is you're saving yourself, and you're taking yourself on. So that's the power of boredom. I'll catch you next time, tomorrow, in fact, on tomorrow's Daily Drop. And I'll leave you with my final thought, which is whatever it is you dare to do or dream, you can begin it now in a bored sort of way, perhaps. Catch you tomorrow. Peace out.